Welcome to Vayse, a podcast about weird stuff. I'm Peter C. Hine, and joining me as always is a man who by a strange synchronicity is both my oldest friend and my co-host here on Vayse. He's as mysterious as the freezing tendrils of coastal night fog which roll in from the endless ocean and reach beneath your calm and collected exterior to chill the very marrow of your bones. And he's as curious as a clouder of ill-fated cats trapped in a bag woven entirely of life's precious puzzles as they fall from the cliff of ignorance to meet their proverbial death on the cold, hard rocks of truth. It's Mr. Stephen James Buckley.
Hello, Vayse Nicks. How are you doing? And thank you once again, Mr. Hine, for that wonderful intro.
What did you think? Was that a bit purple?
Yeah, it was getting a bit Lovecraftian. That I thought it was. I could see a Lovecraft influence creeping in. Maybe we could lean into that. That could be a little theme, sort of. But yeah. Anyway, enough about me. Our guest tonight describes herself in her Twitter bio as the Julia Child of sex magic. I have no idea what any of those things mean. But if her personal blog and podcast appearances are anything to go by, then we're about to have a fascinating conversation full of all manner of weird and wonderful business. She's knowledgeable about a huge range of Vayse-related stuff, so we don't really know where to begin, to be honest. But let's start with hello. Hello, Stephanie Quick.
Welcome, Stephanie.
Hello. How are you guys?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm okay. It's funny because the Julia Child of sex magic thing was something that I put on as a Twitter tag to basically tease my family, because most of my family's on Twitter, and my mom is an outstanding, excellent cook. My sister is as well, as is my brother and my dad and my bonus mom. But my sister had worked for a while as a baker at the Cheese Board, which is like a collective in Berkeley and Gourmet Ghetto. It's like literally across the street from Chez Panisse. And when she worked there, she would meet with Alice Waters weekly to help her choose her cheeses for Chez Panisse. So it's like very high-end Gourmet Ghetto intense stuff. So I figured that would tease my family about, I'm the Julia, because I'm like probably the least foodie person in my family. But the other thing is that Julia Child didn't come to public prominence and really doing what she is known for until she was past 50. Okay. So older. I'm 61 now. And then the thing that I do take seriously about saying that Julia Child is one of my inspirations is that she takes something that, especially at the time when she wrote that introduction to French cooking, was very rarefied and it was very difficult to access, and you weren't really sure if you would be, like, let's say you're in the Midwest of the United States in the 50s or 60s. You go to some fancy French restaurant. You don't know if they're going to rip you off or if they're giving you high quality food or anything. And her position was, I'm going to give you all this knowledge and I'm not going to hold back, so that if you want to put in the time and the attention and develop your skills, then you can create this experience for yourself. Stephen, we were actually discussing this prior to recording. This is something that's very important to me, that if esoterically and, sex magic would be part of that, or erotic mysticism. Mm-hmm. I really believe in putting knowledge and skills and ideas out there so people can pursue this on their own. Because, once you start trying to go out and learn from other people, there can be skeeviness involved. I definitely ran into it myself as like a young woman getting involved in groups. There was a number of people who are incredibly generous and wonderful with me, but then there's also people that will try and take advantage or, assault you or rip you off from money or work, that type of thing. And it's funny because I never ended up like getting formally entangled with any esoteric orders. I mean, I never took Buddhist refuge. I never joined like the OTO or anything like that, or Wiccan covens or whatever, which I always thought when I was younger, I was like, well, maybe that was a big missed opportunity. But in the last few years, when I've had the chance to speak out more publicly, it's actually an advantage because I'm not breaking any vows. because even if you think, well, this people really need to know this, but there's that whole kind of ethical issue of, do I really want to be blowing stuff? And I don't want to like blow anyone's privacy or anything, but I'm not bound to not say certain things because of promises I made or vows I took. So I can basically shoot my mouth off.
Yeah, that's why we wanted you on the show.
Yeah, I love all of that. I mean, all that you've just said has perfectly encapsulated why we wanted you to come on to Vayse tonight. So I'm just starting from your location as well. It sounds so exotic. You're in California, aren't you? On the
yes.
On the West Coast. I've never been. Have you ever been over there, Buckley?
No.
I've been to the East Coast, but the West Coast seems like incredibly all the things that you're talking about there sound incredibly like exotic and far removed. Have you always lived around there?
Yes, I was born in Fresno, which is
the night crawlers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're
one of our favourite cryptids.
They are probably one of our favourite cryptids.
They just look like a pair of pants.
Yes, exactly. That's what's so good about them. Yeah, just the pants.
They're just like walking around. But yeah, so my on my dad's side of the family, they have like ranchers and stuff who had been in that area for a while. And then on my mom's side of the family, there was like rodeo stars and a guy that ran a lodge in North Fork, California. And going back to the Chictansi tribe, which my mom's, her mom's family had been born on the rancheria there, which is kind of like a reservation in California. So then when we were 5, we moved up to the East Bay of San Francisco, just kind of south of Oakland and Berkeley. So most of my life was spent in the East Bay, and I always spent a lot of time in Berkeley and everything. I went to school at UC Santa Cruz, so I was living in Santa Cruz for a couple years in the early 80s, which was really fun. And then a few years ago, I ended up moving up to Napa because my mom had moved up here, and so she was having some big health problems, so I moved in with her to help her out, and just enjoying living in Napa. But California, and I try and convey this to people who aren't from around here, that I can't tell you, just people are just crazy for all type of spiritual esoteric shit around here. People just go out of their minds.
I mean, I've heard it described as like a spiritual marketplace or something like that, where people kind of pick and choose kind of which things that they want to do and things like that.
Yeah, there is just an incredible, I mean, it's like, even if just like in the town of Berkeley, which is now in California, things are becoming less accessible because of the real estate market and prices. But still, you could just go into Berkeley, which is not like a huge town. And it's not like, well, are you going to study Buddhism? It's like, well, which particular branch of Zen Buddhism? What branch of Tibetan Buddhism, right? Are you going to, of course, no, okay. I want to let people know that this is the first podcast interview that I've really done, except for on Project Archivist, after I had an episode of lupus psychosis. I've been having lupus for the last about 3.5 years and not treated all that great. And I ended up in the hospital with a lot of neurological psychiatric symptoms, including very bad aphasia. So I'll forget words or not be able to understand language or have difficulty speaking, which is basically exactly the type of guest you want to have on a podcast.
No, we're really excited to have you here, and trust me, I forget words all the time anyway, and as far as I know, I don't have that. So no, we really appreciate you coming on as well. Thank you.
No, I appreciate people bearing with me, but because of course right now I can't remember any of the branches of Tibetan Buddhism, but yeah, so it's like really intense, and then people are making up their own approaches, spiritual things. They're channeling, they're combining their own, they might have like a type of physical yoga that they've decided to combine with their channeling the Archangel Michael or something like that. You'll see a lot of big established groups. You'll see a lot of small people meeting like in storefronts or just in private homes and coming up with their own material that they're dealing with, which is how I learned a lot of things. So it's, a marketplace kind of undersells it. And that, you just run across people. I was talking with someone about, they were talking about people in cemeteries. And of course, there's a wide variety of activities. But I was thinking, lots of times you'll just go out hiking and you'll see someone's like doing like a small ritual or setting up a little altar or doing something. You just have to say hi. So it's just people just go apeshit around here for it.
It couldn't be more different than the rainy northwest of England that me and Buckley are in at the moment. It really couldn't. And given all of this sort of incredible range of spiritual choices that you're presented with, how did you first find your way into this sort of weird stuff, the spiritual stuff or the paranormal stuff or anything like that?
Well, I mean, I was always interested in weird stuff from the time I was small. I was interested in a lot of things. The first book that I really remember is there's a book called Strangely Enough. I've forgotten the author's name, but it's kind of like a Fortean book for kids. It has a bunch of like about 2 or 3 page write-ups about the Jersey Devils footprints that showed up that one night. Phantom airplanes or out-of-place airplanes, folklore, flying saucer sightings, ghosts. And it really got me interested in the consciousness angle, too, to just see, why did some people seem to kind of have like a fascination, or it seemed like their consciousness kind of was a little bit different when they were seeing certain things. And then, well, the big push for me to get interested in esoteric practices as opposed to just weird paranormal stuff was when I was about 15, I got very ill, and it was probably an autoimmune situation, but I missed almost all of my junior year of high school, and they never figured out could really give me a good diagnosis, but I was able to recuperate, but I still had a lot of problems. And then when I was 21, I ended up getting really ill again, ended up in the hospital and had a big near-death experience when my doctor did this one procedure that gives you a lot of lidocaine to try and calm down your bronchi, because I was just have this, it's kind of like an asthma bronchitis type of thing that wouldn't slow down. And so I was in convulsions for 20 minutes. And the thing about that was that I ended up meeting these beings, and I was in kind of like the classic bardo or void, which is scare the pants off of you because it's like nothing that you can hold on to, and it's very overwhelming. But at the same time, there's just so much, this emptiness is also overwhelming. Anyway, and I could sense these beings that were making themselves very, very obviously present, but they weren't taking me over or anything. They were like, okay, we're here if you want, we can help. But also, it wasn't any type of imposition or anything. So I just said yes, and then I just got this huge amount of teachings and kind of plugged into this consciousness. And so they gave me some specific practices that I started working with. And then about 7 years later, I know exactly it was 7 years later because my boyfriend at the time took me to an exhibit of Tibetan Buddhist art in San Francisco for my birthday. And I saw this one tanka, and it was a dark tanka of Palden Lamo, and I was like, this doesn't look anything like what I saw in that experience, but it's about the exact same thing, and that got me interested in Tibetan Buddhism. But and it's interesting because I'm able to know the date of that show and actually the date that I went, because there was the monks were making a sand mandala. And a woman came in and she was having a mental health crisis, and she started yelling, and she kicked at the mandala. So it was kind of a big deal. It was in the papers and everything. And a guy from the museum helped me find an article about that incident. And I was like, yeah, I actually was there on my birthday, which is kind of fun because, of course, synchronicities are another thing of mine, that it was there on my birthday when I found this. But I had that practice of 7 years to, work with these beings, work with what they taught me, and see what I thought of it, good or bad.
Are you happy to talk a bit about your near-death experience? I nearly died at the same age, around the same age. Oh, wow. I was 16, but I didn't have the classic near-death experience. I don't know how. It's difficult to tell, isn't it? Because there's no real grade as to how close to death you are. Like I was in a coma for about 5 days.
Oh boy!
And
that's close enough.
Yeah, it was close enough for me. But during that time, it was just blank space. There was nothing. So I remember sort of passing out, and then I remember waking up 5 days later. There was nothing in between. But on the morning before, when I was quite ill, I had meningitis, so I was quite ill. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I was really like I'd been vomiting blood, and I was quite a mess at that point, and I suddenly felt a lot better. And in the darkness of my room, in my bedroom, at my childhood home, a load of people came into my room, and I recognised some of them as relatives who died, and I recognised some of them as relatives who were alive, and some of them I didn't recognise at all. And they all sat round my bed, and I seem to remember them kind of talking to me, but I don't remember what they said. And then I kind of passed out again, and then I woke up again a bit later, and it was all gone, and I felt better. And then like obviously a few hours later, I kind of like passed out and didn't wake up again for a few days. But that bit has stayed with me, even though there was none of the classic bright light or the usual things that you would associate with it. That part where a lot of my ancestors had come to sit around my bed has really stuck with me. Was yours more kind of like a classic near-death experience? Classic as in what you would read about in the books, or how did yours go down?
No, I love... this is another one of my passions, which is... I don't want to sound too incendiary.
No, go ahead.
I'm very excited to get academics looking at these type of experiences. And it can be very valuable for people to look at these experiences and to systematize them and come up with these models that we can put on these experiences. But here's the problem. It took me, I don't know, probably the at least 5 years to figure out that what I had was a near-death experience, because there was so much emphasis on, the bright light, getting sent back, blah, 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 blah. Then finally, I read a book by someone called PMH Atwater. I read a few of her books, and I suggest them to people because you have people that are outliers, or you have this kind of idea that... these certain elements and systematizing experiences in a certain way makes an aesthetic or academic sense to certain groups of people, but it leaves out a lot of people who are then like you. Of course that was it's okay. You're in a coma for a number of days. You're vomiting blood, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's near death, right? And the idea that you're seeing dead relatives is like another classic of the near-death thing. The idea that they're communicate, these people, these psychopomps, right, are communicating to you, another classic element, that you had a feeling of peace after that. That's another classic element. That you're still talking about it all this time later and obsessed with it. That is the biggest one that I tend to flag.
That took a while though for me, I think, because
yes.
I spent probably 10 years after that just drinking for a long time. There was no. I feel almost as if in a way I kind of missed something which could have benefited me a lot because of I was raised Catholic, and it was a very scary experience for me where a lot of those things that I'd seen I shouldn't have seen, and I was actually given my last rites, the Catholic rites, extreme-unction, when I was in my hospital bed, and I don't think they really expected me at that point to come back. And so coming back from that also made me feel a bit weird within, how these ideas of these Catholic ideas and so on. I hadn't seen the Blessed Virgin Mary or anything like that. I'd just seen nothingness, and that kind of thing didn't sit right with me for a long time. And it wasn't really till I got into my 30s. So that happened to me when I was 16. It wasn't really till I got into my 30s that I started to properly process that.
Yeah, and that is where these ideas, they can kind of be helpful, and it's nice for people to have an idea that this is kind of making some type of sense. But you have a lot of people that are outliers, and or just people that could use more education or help with, because a lot of these experiences are in and of themselves very challenging, and people like to talk about that. It's exciting, except for then you have, you're only 16 and you've been, physically, that's a whole thing to go through. And how can we try and talk about this in a way that is going to help people because a lot of people who come to these, to experiences of the weird is because they've had their own experience and you're struggling with it on whatever level. So to me, that should be more of a motivator than, oh, look, here I am. I came up with this really all-inclusive idea about how smart I am about looking at alien encounters or whatever. I mean, things can definitely overlap, but I've never spoken with an academic or participated in any studies about near-death experiences, because every time I've come across one and I go and I look at what they're asking, and it does not map onto my own experience whatsoever. It makes no sense.
What was your experience like? If you happy to talk about it.
No, it was weird. So first of all, I was very fortunate because I had a doctor who I had been with for a number of years, but he was still on the younger side when this happened. And so I was lucky there, and my family was lucky there because we had good communication. So I'd been very ill, and it was probably an autoimmune thing, which causes you like a massive fatigue. Like, you're just like, your body's just trying so hard to fight it. You don't have any brain power or anything left. And so he'd been doing intravenous steroids, and that hadn't really worked. So he was going to do this procedure where they put a scope like up your nose and down into your lungs, and they spray this lidocaine all over, because they'd found in some people this can calm the spasming of the bronchi. So I'm sitting on the edge of a gurney in like the emergency department in this hospital, and he's standing right in front of me, and this is like in the mid 80s or something, so they don't make those scopes longer than they had to, I think. So this thing is like up my nose, and he's like right there. So we're like looking at each other, and he's spraying this stuff, and I'm trying to inhale it as it's coming in. So it's like this healing liquid is coming from my head down here. And you can also see, because this laser is very bright, a red pinkish light, because it's shining out through your chest cavity, right? So you can see it. So you're like breathing and everything. And then my consciousness starts to shift. And it's like this weird thing of, it's like, because you're so close to this other person, and you're kind of breathing and doing this whole thing in sync with this whole idea of healing and taking in this. And so it was very much like a meditation, as I found out later. And so I think that mindset and concentration helped me when I went into the convulsions, which is like suddenly you're just in this, visually it was just kind of like a night sky with very faint stars were kind of moving. but it was super loud and just like overwhelmingly big and just like crammed with consciousness everywhere that was like manifest and also imminent. And I had this sense that I was falling, but it's kind of like as you're falling, I don't know how to describe it. It's like as you're falling through dimensions. So kind of start out big and then just get smaller and smaller and smaller. And then you pop into a dimension where it's like really big again. But so all this is happening and it's like freaking you out because you don't realize how much your sense of self and your kind of consciousness is used to being in a body and being like a DNA-based being, being able to breathe, everything. It was just very disorienting. And then I sensed these beings that were huge. And I decided to throw in with them. And it was like they were talking at me and also showing me things energetically and kind of tossing. I don't know if you ever read Robert Monroe, where he talks about rotes, right? So it's kind of like a ball of information that you can kind of look out later if you want. But mostly they were saying, kind of like pay attention and giving me like kind of a mindfulness meditation idea. They got across to me the idea that I needed to walk to essentially, it would strengthen an organ that would help knit my body into my consciousness better and strengthen that. That I needed to pay attention to my body and bodily sensations if I wanted to get better, because you have to know what's going on before you can. I mean, it's like with asthma, right? If you pay attention to the beginning symptoms, you can take medicine and tamp it down. I mean, this is the same for anyone. If you're going to be in a body, you got to pay attention to it. The other thing that they taught me these are kind of like the main things at that time, was that, well, first of all, that we're all connected. What does that mean? That's a big one. But then also, they're saying these practices, if you do them, it will basically build kind of your light of your neutral core, which is what they were kind of instantiating in my energetic body, getting the feel of the core. And if you build this, do these exercises, you're going to build your energy or your light. And there are entities out there that are going to want to take that for themselves. So if you stay in this particular energetic body configuration in your neutral core, then they can't get at you. It's kind of like a place to escape to, or to kind of keep yourself to yourself. And this is the type of thing where if you go through an experience like this and you're thinking, well, how, because when I came out, I was like, how do I prove this? Because I had a lot of science training by that point. I'm like, how do you prove any of this or work with it? And sometimes you'll get a confirmation, because I never really read any of Whitley Strieber's books or followed him much, but I run across his interviews or something every once in a while. And he was talking with, I believe, Greg Bishop, but he was saying that and Greg was like, well, why do you think the visitors came to see you when they did? And he's like, well, I know exactly why, because he was doing Gurdjieff sensing exercises, and this would build his light, as meditators talk about. And he's like, I think that sent out a beacon and they wanted to come down and do it. And I thought that's so interesting, because it's like a very similar dynamic to what I was taught, which is that certain practices are going to send out energy and how to manage who shows up or who doesn't show up.
That is amazing. That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's an amazing story, and it's like you mentioned Strieber, and it's sort of the first thing that came to mind when you told this story was sort of the similarity with kind of supposed alien abductions, and it made me think kind of. There's always this association, isn't there, between death and space consciousness. and space, and like that they seem to be like somehow intertwined. And then this idea that sort of, I guess I'm just thinking aloud here, by the way, that so say if like UFOs, the things that people think of as UFOs, the things that people see in the sky, the association with space coming from these experiences that people have with entities that aren't necessarily from space, but it's like there's always that connection with space, isn't there? And it's just like, once you get in with like the kind of meditation side of it as well, there's something there to unpick, but I'm not the man to do it. But no, I just wondered, like, did you have any thoughts about the kind of space connection? Because you described it as falling through, almost like falling through stars and falling through space. And then, do you think there's anything in that? Do you think it's just like an archetypal image or something? I don't know.
I'm not qualified either. The impression I got was that, first of all, that there is consciousness is basically everywhere, and so there's going to be consciousness out, on the planet Jupiter or whatever as well. There's going to be this consciousness is suffusing everything. But then also, there's, I don't know. They're consistently, like you say, through meditation, through mythology, all around the world, and through time, there's always this idea of space beings. Things happening in space.
Or going to like the Egyptians and pyramids, and that was all ascending to the stars and stuff like that. And there's like,
heaven. Just heaven, the idea of heaven being above us, and the Christian ideas.
Obviously, then you've got your mandala UFO connection as well, which there's so many. There's just like a massive range of these kind of images and ideas and connections that are all there, and it's just like I feel like almost we're on the cusp. Not just us three. I mean,
I think we're closer than we were.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of the people who write about it and stuff. It's almost like humanity is on the cusp of understanding it. Like when there's a word that's just on the tip of your tongue, but you can't quite remember it, or something that's just outside your periphery vision and you can't quite see it, or trying to remember a dream. That's what it's most like. Trying to remember a dream.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Yeah.
It's like I somehow feel like, and I got this massively from what you described, that it kind of makes sense to me, and I could almost describe it, but I can't.
It reminds me of what Nathan Paul Isaac was saying about you can't look directly at it, you can only see it from the peripheral of your vision, and that's what it feels like. The whole thing that you were saying about there being consciousness throughout the universe really appeals to me, because I just have this idea, and I've been noodling around with it in my head about the universe having a tendency towards consciousness. You know how when people talk about life on Earth and they say, the circumstances for life are very rare, and then the circumstances that could have led to the evolution of conscious beings is very rare. Well, it might be that the form of life that we have here on Earth is very rare, but what if the actual tendency towards consciousness is much more common? And I always think this because, as well, you were saying about there being consciousness on Jupiter and throughout the universe, and that just reminded me so much of the thought, which is completely true, that we're all made of this stuff that's come from the stars. That's all this stuff that's
made
come
of
down.
Star stuff.
Exactly, and I really love that idea. Whenever I feel down, I think about that. That the bits that make me have been flying through space for light years and light years. But that is what made me think. That some of this stuff will become conscious. When you were talking about these entities that you saw, did they have a physical form at all that you could see?
No. Later on, I ended up studying with Rinpoche, who lived in Kensington. He had a Tibetan Buddhist meditation center, and I lived there for, I don't know, a few years, and studied with him. And then also his girlfriend, Judith Skinner, taught me an incredible amount. But yes, when I was describing that to him, he said it sounded like the Tathagatas, which is kind of like a spiritual FBI or something.
I like this idea.
Yeah.
How does that work?
The Mulder and Scully of the spiritual plane.
It's kind of like basically, well, kind of like Alan Greenfield was talking about the whole idea of like the Black Lodge and the White Lodge.
Yeah.
Kind of like the idea that you have certain spiritual entities that are out there, and they're kind of looking out for people that are in trouble, or the people that can kind of help advance their spiritual ideas or values more. And so that, I feel kind of uncomfortable claiming that, but, we knew each other for years. So he would know better than, other people. But to me, yeah, they came across as like very, very big, like, 2 or 3 Empire State Buildings together big.
Wow, okay. I was thinking like 9 feet, 10 feet, but we're talking, okay.
Which would also be big, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, I need to think bigger. Yeah, you see, English, we're used to things being quite a lot smaller. In America, you've got all these, we're not as advanced.
Your skyscraper-sized entities.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that was shocking about it, because it's like I had no idea any of this could go on, and I was like, okay. So it was a bit of a shock.
It's quite interesting that you didn't see, like, the archetypal grey image or the Blessed Virgin Mary or whatever, like, which makes it, in my view, cooler.
It was very abstract, and you just, however it comes at you is how it's going to come.
It seems like yours was a lot more useful than mine, because they actually gave you teachings and that kind of thing. Did you find, once you'd recovered and you were well enough to process some of these ideas that had been transmitted to you, what became of that?
I had a very strong drive to find out more about these type of practices, and I still have a very strong drive to help, just help people who may be in a similar situation of life being up in the air, or having these kind of odd, strange experiences that you are having trouble grappling with. For me, I feel odd, because sometimes people will say, that I'm a researcher, and I'm kind of, but my biggest drive is to be more what you would think of, well, just like a spiritual friend, like someone who is also along the path, and I will do my best to present facts as they are, but I will lie straight to your face if that's what you need in the moment, right? I'm thinking of, when you have the EMT guys that come and you've been in a car accident, and, they're telling you, yeah, you're fine, you're going to be okay, blah, 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 right? They don't know that. But that they do know that your best chance is going to be if you're calm and can stay present. And so that's what they're encouraging, right? So you have to think, like people who are concerned about, well, is this one, let's say, you get people that are really into UFO sightings, and I love some of them. But it's like, well, actually, when on this particular encounter, the guy wasn't wearing a green plaid flannel shirt. He was wearing a teal plaid flannel shirt. It's
also, like when you're concentrating on the finer details and you're missing the bigger picture.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there there can be benefit to tracing some of those finer details, but you have to me, the thing that I don't like is when people say that's the only part of reality that matters. Because there are other aspects to me, like, someone's like emotional, ontological stability can also be important. And it's important to address that aspect of the phenomena as well, I think. So,
did that near-death experience that you had then in your early 20s, did that lead to a magical or spiritual practice?
Yeah, I mean, I started grappling with those practices and, pursuing them. And basically I have ever since. I ended up, I've always practiced on my own with the awareness meditation and the walking. When I was in high school, we had a yoga teacher, and so I always did certain, just like physical yoga and savasana. Mm-hmm. I've never been like a real big I have my altar and I leave the offerings every day, that type of thing. And then when I was in my, I don't know, like a late, I guess it was around 30-ish, maybe early 30s, I had a change in my life circumstances where I was able to go live at that Tibetan meditation center, Tibetan Buddhist meditation center, and study there. And then I ended up studying with and sitting with Leslie Temple Thurston, who was coming to the area every month or every a couple months during that time period. And she has her own system that she has developed and has been teaching for quite a while. I learned an incredible amount from her, just, sitting and meditating. Her approach is more that you have your energy body and your attention and your will. And you basically are expanding and structuring your own energy body to accomplish your spiritual and magical goals. So instead of having like so much of the altar outside, you're working with your own energetic structures and attention. And then also at that time, I had met a fellow student up at the center who was a middle-aged lady, and she was really had been a student of some different North American indigenous spiritual practices for many decades at that point. She had studied with various teachers and done a lot of different rituals, and she would have a sweat lodge every month. And so I helped her with that and would sit in the lodges for a while. We kind of had a relationship too. But she also knew a lot about astrology. She knew a lot about acupuncture, acupressure points, the Chinese 5-element system, and then she was really into New Thought as well. So I really learned just an incredible amount from her. Talking with Anthony 9 on Twitter today about this, the idea that you can kind of have times when you're just practicing on your own for a number of years, and then you get into contact with some other people and practice with them, with different systems that they've come from, and see, what holds true, what you need to reevaluate, then regroup again. But yeah, that was an interesting time in my life. I was in a place where I had the resources and the time, mostly the time, to be able to go pursue all these things. Yeah, and then I don't know, probably about the better part of 20 years ago, I really got interested in synchronicities, and I'm still pursuing that quite a bit because, again, I think it's really important for people to connect with their own experiences, because it's very easy to be glamored by gurus or, UFO people or whoever who is like, oh, I have this inside knowledge, just give me $25.95 and it can also be yours.
Yeah.
Or if you're practicing with people in person, there is the possibility of, sexual abuse, financial abuse, getting isolated from your family and friends, having your life become unbalanced, that type of thing. So I forget what the name of the book was. I'd never been able to track it down. It was just this book on synchronicities. And this guy was saying synchronicities are great because they tend to pop up around all the other classical paranormal events, UFOs, hauntings, poltergeists, so on. But they're real easy to get going if you just pay attention to the idea of synchronicities and any synchronicities that pop up. You can get your own to pop up. And then you can think about your own experience that way. I thought, what? That would be kind of cool. Because a lot of the problems that you have, even just investigating something like UFOs or ghosts, is like, well, it's hard to have them pop up, right? They tend to occur spontaneously. So I thought, well, synchronicities would be something that people could study on their own, and it's not maybe as challenging as like a full-on, full-body apparition in the dead of night coming at you. It would kind of ease people into like a weird experience. So I've got more interest these days. That's where a lot more of my focus lies, is having my colleague AP Strange is on Twitter, and we have a lot of fun. We both have also an interest in humor in the paranormal, but we had done a show on Our Strange Skies with Rob, who is Jim, about Sam the Sandown Clown.
Oh yeah,
it's a good episode. Yeah,
it's another one of our favorite beings as well.
Yeah, it's so just weird. But Matt, we're kind of not too far into the show where Matt just kind of like busts out. He's like, okay, I'm trying to open the clown portal and y'all are going to have like clown-based synchronicities.
Yeah.
And then we managed to do it. So this whole idea that you can kind of create like an experience or an object or work of art or podcast that is going to be supercharged, where people who want that energy can get those synchronicities going on their own, so they can start to look into their own experiences and know that they have that ability themselves.
Say if there were a couple of people who had a podcast who wanted to do something like that, what advice would you give them if they were, say, two middle-aged men from England, perhaps? Or
Well, I have actually, fortunately, my past self has written up it was one of my first blog posts, and it's funny because I wrote it up because Steve Ray and I had done a psychic influencing experiment trying to drum up synchronicities on a Greg Bishop's show, Radio Mysterioso. And we had some good hits, and you can actually go listen to the show where we talk about that. And that was really valuable. There's something about practicing with someone else, and I think Steve and I had a good chemistry. It was his idea, but we had a good chemistry for drumming up these syncs and documenting them. But so some of the people that listened to that show were like, well, what's your method? And so I wrote a blog post, and it's on my blog. It's my method for inducing synchronicities. So people can go there and read that if they want.
We'll link to that in the show notes.
Yeah. Because partly my brain is blinking out a little bit right now because of the neurological insults. But I wanted to go meta on people on this issue because part of what I did and why I would encourage people, if you really want to do this, to go take a look at that blog was my friend Darsha, the lady that ran the Sweat Lodge, Leslie Temple Thurston, both of them, and Lama Kunga as well, were real hard asses about a certain angle of esoteric practice that I don't see people get into or talk about a lot, which is that if I'm encouraging you to try something, if I am starting a ritual, if I'm going to say, go on a podcast and say, yeah, I want to infuse this podcast with that type of, I just thought of a terrible word, but I'm going to say it, kind of psychic jizz that is going to impregnate people with the ability to
that will be the name of this episode.
Psychic jizz. This really does need to be the lady. Like, I hope you're not joking there, Hine. It really does. Like, if you don't name the episode "Psychic Jizz," you're gonna have to find another co-host.
Oh no! But so if I'm starting it right, then it's my responsibility to set up safeguards. So in that blog post, that has a charge on it that if anyone's doing this, I want it to be something that they can handle and it's not going to be too disruptive. And if something disruptive does come up, it needs to come through me first. When Darsha would have a sweat lodge, I mean, even just the physical stuff of making the lodge, getting the rocks and all the firewood and everything, this is a lot of physical work. But for about a week beforehand, there's just like a lot of subtle work. It's like, who's going to be there? What are their issues? What am I sensing about where they are on these issues that I know about? What's going on between the people? Is there anything happening with any of the attendees' families that is going to come up? What can we do to move that through, to ameliorate that? So it's the same with any other type of ritual. And she took that very seriously. And, the same with the Tibetan Buddhist lamas and Rinpoches who came through, same with Leslie Temple Thurston. So that's partly why I would encourage people, if you want to even just kind of take a look at that blog, so that I can have a psychic thread on you in case. And I think I say in there someplace, and I've said this to people in my that I know personally as well as people online. It's like if you can't get a hold of me electronically in the manifest physical world, just you may feel stupid, but feel free to reach out psychically however you think you may be able to. And I've set that energy there for you. To me, that's part of, if you're trying to, help people or become more of a teacher than a student, that's part of it. But a lot of with, you want to charge something, the main thing is the intention. It's a good idea to come up with a central symbol, especially if you're beginning, like a clown's or, whatever you want. And then you want to feed that symbol with your emotional energy. But, just like joking around about a symbol is good. It helps to get creative energy towards it, and you're feeding it emotional energy. And the emotional energy you're feeding it is fun and lighthearted. Right? If it's something that upsets you or that you find makes you anxious or is scary, you can use that energy, but then it's going, like you're feeding it what's going to tend to come back to you. Which is another reason why I don't mind making fun of myself or putting out like like my stupid underwear synchronicities or something.
Yeah.
Because it's like another way of making it is like, do I enjoy looking like an idiot or looking like I'm some old lady who's just like kind of perverted about underwear or something? It's not like it does embarrass me, but then I would rather have an unpleasant result be me being embarrassed or me looking ridiculous than someone having a problem. If someone's working with this immediately, I'd rather kind of take that hit than have them have a hit of, maybe being clumsy or having a small accident or something.
Thinking about synchronicities like this, when we recently spoke to Doug Batchelor from the What Magic Is This podcast, and that was a lot of fun, but one of the things that I didn't expect, because he's a ceremonial, well, he doesn't call himself ceremonial magician, but he comes from that tradition, he's very performative. A lot of his rituals are quite baroque. He does a lot of, they're quite lengthy rituals, and he goes to quite a lot of effort with them, and it's really, really interesting to find out about that stuff. But when we spoke to him, interestingly, he made quite a big deal about synchronicities, which is really interesting because it does seem to me, and I think me and Buckley have talked about this before, how synchronicities seem to be like the base level of magic, or like an entry point, or just kind of what's there when you strip everything else away, are these weird channels of coincidence and meaning, and that seem to run through a lot of these paranormal experiences, a lot of these magical rituals, and a lot of these encounters that you have with entities.
Mm-hmm. It's just this idea that meaning and symbolism becomes heightened. And it's interesting to me because I have some science. When I was in like high school and college, I had some more science training in like biology a little bit. And it's interesting to me because meaning is very important to all life organisms, right? I mean, I'm a bird watcher. Not everyone loves birds. Bird watching is very popular because birds are very beautiful. Because they have a very striking symbolism associated with pattern and color and behavior, because this means something, right? Same with sound and birds. Their various calls and songs have meaning. They have meaning to other birds, right? So meaning goes way back. If you look at like a single-celled organism, right? Let's say it's a paramecium. I think they're single-celled. My brother will roast me if they're not. But let's say you have a paramecium, right? So it has certain needs, right? It's going to want food, water, whatever. So it's going to have input from different areas on different parts of the cell, right? It's going to get different input. Let's say that this tastes like food over here or something. I don't know how they experience the world on one side and not on the other, right? The difference between, hey, there's food over here, there's not like a food molecule over here. The difference between those two bits of information is the meaning, because it's telling that paramecium you want to go towards the food, and there's more food input over on this side, right? Does that make sense? The difference between information and meaning? Or like if you have a plant and it wants to grow towards the light, right? It has leaves that are getting different amounts of photons kicking off on different parts of the leaves. So the difference between that, the pattern that it makes, is the meaning for the plant, so that it knows which way it wants to go, if it wants to go towards the light. now we have a plant having a near-death experience. Go towards the light.
Yeah, maybe that can be the next question. Do plants have near-death experience? It's I think like with a lot of stuff, like, you know, in my I always use this phrase, in my limited understanding of magic and in ufology, it always seems to come back to the symbols. It always seems to come back to, you know, you're working with symbols, and it's kind of what symbols work for you, almost.
It's a really important point. And it's funny because you were talking about intuition earlier, and I think that at a certain point, the reason that magicians and I believe UFOs tend to work through symbols is it becomes a way to organize your consciousness and your energetic body, your subtle bodies. At certain points of working, you'll realize that you can just have, you know, that like the felt sensation of an emotion. If you kind of rarefy that into like even a subtler experience that goes beyond the body and is more about how your attention goes. I don't know how to explain this, but the past several years is I've always liked to lie down of an afternoon and put a blindfold on and start meditating a little bit. And I've become more adept at just kind of like tuning in on the consciousness level. It's a feeling of, you know, old timey radios, broadcast radios, where you go through the various frequencies, and it's a lot more like that. But I think that a lot of people can have that experience. If you look at the Robert Monroe Gateway training, he uses that kind of metaphor in a very similar type of experience. But I've noticed that there's certain entities or intelligences that I work with that you can just kind of tune into their frequency.
And are you saying that that's a method that you can use to help to develop your intuition?
I think that there's probably going to be an overlap there. I think partly intuition comes down to being able to access the pattern making part of your brain. And this is again where symbols and working with symbols can be helpful, because they come through in many ways. You find in, for example, traditional groups of ceremonial magicians, right? You'll have like let's say a hot pink dodecahedron, right? And that's going to be your key to access certain, let's say, astral rooms or astral areas that are created and maintained by that group. And that works well as, like, let's say, a security measure. But also, if you're still training your mind, you may not be able to just go with just kind of like by feel or by vibration.
Share something with you. I don't think I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but when I was in my early 30s, I went, I didn't have a lot of money at that time, but when I could afford it, I went to this kind of meditation group. And it was just a few quid, and you'd go in and you'd basically sit down, and one guy would take you through guided meditation. Then you'd have a more free meditation. One time, just this one time in all the time that I went, we got to the free meditation part, and as I was just meditating, at the time I was meditating quite a lot, so I did manage to clear my mind. So it was almost like kind of darkness, but not quite darkness, just space. And suddenly there was this thing in front of me, And the best way I can describe it is that it was like a glowing orange 16-bit pineapple. Just the orange bit, just in front of me, very clumsily rendered as if it was an old-fashioned computer game. Mm-hmm. And I kind of oriented myself towards it, and it came towards me. And as my presence, rather than my body, met this 16-bit pineapple, I just got this wave of absolute peace and almost like euphoric bliss running through me. And it lasted seconds, maybe possibly as long as 30, but time wasn't really, I couldn't really tell you how long it was. But I've kind of been looking for that 16-bit pineapple ever since, because that was the only time I've encountered it. It's the only time that I've touched upon that feeling, but never in that concentrated pure form. But what you were saying about the hot pink decahedron, that almost related. There must have been some, I wonder if it was maybe a chakra, maybe it was a crystal. I don't know, but I have no idea what that was. It was an artifact from this one meditation that I've never been able to find again, but it was just so beautiful. That whole experience was so peaceful and blissful and amazing.
So about how many years ago was that in human years?
So
see, even just talking about it, you got my sense of time thrown off.
So that was I would have been maybe 32 or 33, so maybe 8 years ago-ish. Yeah. That
it's a mystery. I think that you had that sense of bliss and that it presented itself in a way that would be easily recognizable, and that you're still interested into this. I have found that there are certain experiences that can take quite a while, like a decade or two or more, to unfold or to develop again. So I would say keep the faith, but also one thing that Leslie Temple Thurston would talk about is the idea of when you have a really numinous experience, to write it down or record it, for example, as you have now. It's a way of bringing that energy into the consensus reality and the manifest world. And so when you go back to that, you are, reliving that experience, but also feeding, like we were talking about before, synchronicities, you're feeding into that experience. So even, for example, talking about it on this show and then having your podcast go out there, you don't know if you'll, one thing could be someone, you hear from someone who's had that same experience or seen that similar entity. So you don't know, but there's, I think that there is something to keeping certain experiences private, and sometimes you just don't even really know how to try and convey it.
Yeah.
But there is also something to be said for knitting your numinous experiences into consensus material reality, and to speaking publicly about them can be a way of activating them.
Right.
And I would say 8 years isn't that long of a time. See, this is why I'm always saying, this is why they're always telling monks and everything are always praying for long life, because a lot of these, I don't know if it's just me, where it takes me a long time to get anywhere. But some of these processes can take really quite a long time to unfold. So, and just when you think that, you've kind of stabilized in your practice and you're kind of, okay, this is, I guess this is what it is. It's pretty intense, but I've kind of got the hang of it. And then something that you never even imagined can bust forward. But it sounds like there was a connection, a real connection made there. So
yeah, that's really interesting what you were saying about how all these things can coalesce over time, because what I'm finding as we do Vayse, and we were talking to Doug about this at the beginning of season 2, about how because I think he sees his podcast as a magical working, and I'm on the same thought pattern with Vayse. You know, I think that Vayse is becoming for me more of a magical working, and I'm finding experiences that I've had all the way back from when I was 8 years old are coalescing and making more sense as we do this. Almost like the project, as we talk about it, as you were saying, as you talk about it, it becomes something. It's like we're dragging it into the manifest consensus world, but also makes me almost like my life is making a little bit more sense, just a little bit, little by little. It's making a little bit more sense, and like this is a necessary process for me. I don't know, are you feeling this as well, Buckley, or what's your
I haven't really thought about it like that, to be honest. It's more like I know sort of around this time last year, kind of late July last year, I had that experience in London with the sort of swarm of synchronicities that were seemed to come very much, you know, around the time when we were starting out the podcast, and it just sort of felt like, okay, wow. Steph won't know this, but we met when we were 10 years old, ghost hunting together, you know. So we're talking 32 years ago, 31, 32 years ago, and was our meeting, you know, just so we could do this? I don't know. Yeah. You know, it's something to think about, isn't it? You know, sort of if you take it back, you know, that far. I mean,
it's certainly the most progress I've made over a short space of time, because what's it been, about a year now that we've been doing it? Yeah. The most progress I've made in making sense of my life and how my place in the universe, if you want to use a really grand and overblown term for it. But that is kind of what it feels like. It feels like we're poking and prodding and trying to find out how it works, and speaking to people like you who have all this knowledge, and every little thing, like just some of the stuff that you've been talking about to us tonight has been really fortuitous, in that there's certain projects that we're hoping to work on that you've spoken to directly without even knowing about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is
really, really interesting. I think really interesting.
We shared a knowing look at that point, didn't we?
Yeah, we tried to.
And then another one about a minute later when she said something else that was related, and we were like, we know, yeah, she knows.
We've been extraordinarily lucky to speak to so many knowledgeable and wise people, because every little bit, again, I was thinking about this earlier, every person that we've spoken to, we've learned something from, something that we can probably apply to some of these ideas and projects, and also apply to Vayse going forward, which is a nice feeling. It feels like there's, whether it's a single purpose or not, it feels like there's a flow that we're stepping into, which is, you know, connected us to you, to you know, Nathan, to Sequoia, to Alan Greenfield, to all these people that we've spoken to.
It seems like it's almost like a network of people that we speak to, who, and it's but even though everyone is slightly different in what they bring to the table, we're all working together towards a similar goal, which I suppose, if it had to have a description, it would be perhaps a similar goal to the entities which spoke to you, Steph, in terms of its expanding consciousness. It's sort of making people see things outside of consensus reality. It's making people question things, and it's kind of brain change, isn't it? It's mind expansion. It's that kind of thing. And although we're only a very small part of it, and there's podcasts out there that have been going on for longer and have a far bigger reach, that are doing far, you know, probably having far more of an impact than we are. It's nice to think, and I suppose that the way I see it is that on some small level, we're part of a bigger thing. And it's sort of nice to be part of it, really. It's nice to think that there are people, and we've seen it on quite a small level, like I say, but we've seen it where we think that there's people who've come to us and basically said, yeah, you've I don't want to say changed my life, but you've given me a lot to think about, and you've made me buy a bunch of books and think differently and stuff like that. And there's a few people like that. And I suppose, as someone who's been doing this for a long while, Steph, you'll know this, like there's probably hundreds of people that you've had that effect on. So it's like we're all part of just this same thing of like just spreading the weird word.
Is that how you see your role now? Because you were talking about coming to more prominence in slightly later life, as you was talking about Julia Childs earlier. And you'd said to me when we were talking, had some fantastic conversations by message, and you'd said to us about teaching, and you'd said to avoid teachers who make sweeping, mysterious statements. You want people who'll talk straight to you. Is that something that you find to be very important to what you do?
Yes, I think, everyone has to find their own path. But the one thing that I felt was lacking when you two were just talking about your own project is that you are friends, and it's very apparent in your show, and that's a lot of the charm of it, and that's a lot of what I think attracts people to it, and that can get lost is that there needs to be some heart in all this, right?
Definitely. Yeah.
And it's like, how can we treat other people well as we're going through all these weird experiences and trying to figure out life and get more conscious about things. That to me, that's always been what motivates it, is to try and help other people, even if it's just to make someone laugh or something, because life can be hard. We need to have things that inspire us and to be able to joke around to get through it, because especially the last few years, it's been rough. So yeah, I forgot what your question was. Oh, sweeping statements.
Sweeping statements.
It's a hard thing. I have been talking with AP Strange the last while more about Gurdjieff, because he's the classical type of old school glamorous trickster teacher where he will just shine you on, and he's always has this outsized persona, knows everything, very adept at handling people. And I think a lot of people would say that it was well known that when you kind of put yourself in his care, that, you had no insight into his inner workings. He was the teacher who knew and was a lot more than you, and you're the student. So you're just doing a lot of things that you have no idea what his motivation is or purpose. And I think that those type of teachers can be incredibly influential. I mean, look at Gurdjieff. He's influenced a number of people, even just like in the musical pop culture of music and art. He's had an incredible influence behind the scenes. I mean, look at Strieber, how influential he was. His whole idea behind aliens and communion, and his experience, in his own words, was precipitated by practicing what Gurdjieff had taught. But that's not the only way to go about it. And I think as we've gone through, especially the last 100 years, there's been a lot of movements towards less hierarchical approaches to life generally, and also in the occult and esoteric studies. And just in my own pursuit of esoteric knowledge, I saw that the whole idea of authority and hierarchy could be really abused and even just detrimental to just normal transmission of knowledge. So, and it's interesting you were talking about Alan Greenfield earlier, because one of my earlier podcast hosting forays, Rojan of Project Archivist and I spoke to Alan Greenfield about his own experiences in sex magic. And he was very forthcoming, and I really appreciated it, because he spoke about being in the Ancient Order of Antiquity, Esoteric Order of Antiquity. Yeah. I don't know if we can say who it was or not, but you're basically kind of
said it on our podcast.
Classical ceremonial magic situation, and how he and a number of other people were, sexually exploited in that context. And then when he pursued erotic mysticism and sex magic on his own, with his girlfriend at the time or partner of the times, in a straight across, collaborative, more equal setting, that he had much more profound experiences and much more striking results. Also, it was actually kind of fun. Which I think sometimes people forget about sex magic. And so I was very happy to do that show with him. And again, that's another instance where we had a very blatant, is not quite the word, but above board, agreed upon idea that our intention was to get this knowledge out there so people could avoid exploitive situations. And then they could also pursue experiences and rituals, skills that would benefit them, and they could grow and have positive experiences, and have that heartfelt and honest connection, as well, and not feeling like you have to put yourself in some kind of scary, risky situation with someone who's kind of grossing you out just to try and get some type of initiation. More the idea of, I'm all into like self-initiation in a lot of these areas. So
yeah, I've just been listening to a podcast about Castaneda, so a lot of that kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I still see people sometimes today who are just like kind of unquestioning about, oh, wow, look at Castaneda. And there is a huge glamour there. Yeah. Even just I love the art on his original paperbacks.
Yeah.
It's incredible. He could tell the stories are phenomenal. But you can see as well that in his stories and his philosophy from the very beginning, he has this whole ideas that where he ended up as he did, which is, he's in this kind of, he ran a death cult. The women who were closest to him at the end of his life have, I guess one of them has been found, her body's been found, and the other ones have disappeared and never been seen of again. So it's important to deconstruct some of this glamour and ideas. Even his whole idea about Don Juan could just kind of go up to, and Gurdjieff would do this similarly. And sometimes it will happen that, even us kind of lower beings can pull this type of thing off, where you go up and you see someone and you're able to really radically change their consciousness through subtle means. He would, Don Juan in the Castaneda books would like strike you at a certain angle and put you into an altered state of consciousness. People will slip people a Mickey, but you can do this to other people. Should you do it to someone, right?
Well, absolutely
not. That's the question.
Yeah.
I'm very new to Castaneda. I just listened to this long podcast series about him. So it's about 10 episodes or something. We can link to it in the show notes. But it seems to me like it's one of those situations where he wasn't a very nice man at all. But that doesn't mean he's not interesting, and that there aren't some interesting ideas going on. I guess Crowley is similar in that respect, and it just makes you wonder, doesn't it? Sort of with the whole cult thing, it's kind of there seems to be. I don't know what the pattern is, but they all seem to do the same thing and a very similar thing. And it's like, I guess what you're saying is that this approach that you have. And the sort of thing that you're warning people about is as a protection from that, which is inherently, I think, a good thing to warn people, because we don't want any more Castaneda situations.
If people are interested in Castaneda, I always recommend Amy Wallace's book, Sorcerer's Apprentice. Have you read it?
No, I know. I heard about it, I think, on that podcast, but...
Yeah, she is... And again, it's this whole strange way that the magical life can unfold. Her father was Irving Wallace, who was a very prominent writer. And so when she was just a teen, she actually met Castaneda. And then when she became, I'm going to say when she became legal, which is about how it went down, Castaneda started cultivating her romantically. So she spent a lot of her adult life being part of his inner circle, being kicked out from his inner circle for no good reason. He was incredibly manipulative. I mean, and a real control freak. The women that were closest to him, he really liked women that had kind of a elfish or tomboy look and with short hair. And so if you were one of these women, you had to let him be the only one who would cut your hair, right? And he would give you like an incredible haircut and wash your hair and rinse it in rosemary water afterwards and just be so loving and you look. So she said she would walk down like, what's that the main boulevard, Rodeo Boulevard in Hollywood. Actresses would come up and say, "Who did your hair?" And she couldn't say who it was. You know, they were dying to get a recommendation. He was very artistic. She has pieces of jewelry that he made for her, which I wouldn't mind having any of that either. But then, right, you could never ask. So she talks about just how much she would jerk people around. She would talk about, she was like trying to go for a really big job interview and her hair was just like completely grown out. She felt like she couldn't cut it, but it was just this level of petty manipulation about every aspect of your life, jerking people around. He, keep you close and then, cut you off for no good reason. Yeah, and then in the end, a number of these women, apparently it looks like they committed suicide. But Amy Wallace wrote this book about it. She's an incredible writer. She had like a romantic and sexual relationship with him over many years. He was a bigamist. He married like 2 or 3 of these other women who were close to him. He always had like kind of was sleeping with like a half a dozen women at any one time. It's interesting to me because Castaneda is a great storyteller, and you wonder, I think Wallace wonders as well. Well, unfortunately, she died a number of years ago, but she wonders as well, would she have been as good of a writer if she hadn't been around him? And also, this is like the big story that she has to tell, which is very unique, very fraught. But, it's just devastating because she's so close to these people. She has like Florinda Donner, who's one of his main women, coming by her house every day for breakfast. And then suddenly, when he dies the next day, she's like calling everyone's phone number and all their lines are dead and she never sees anyone ever again. Yeah, and these are like the people that she was the absolute closest to. And if you look at Carlos Castaneda's worldview and stuff from the beginning, he's very much about, you were the individual man, you were fighting against death, women have a hole between their legs, it goes to infinity, you can't trust them. And this is very combative, very aggressive, very much, the universe is trying to eat you and you can't trust anyone and you need to erase your personal history. You just make people give away their pets and cut off contact with all of their family. Because the other thing is that he was incredibly influential and he's still very popular, like around here in the Bay Area and stuff. You go to any used bookstore, it doesn't have to be a bookstore about, weird stuff, or metaphysical as they would call it. And they're going to have all his books for sale and they're going to have a deep stack of them because they're still incredibly popular. So I've known a number of people who are heavily involved in reading Castaneda and working with Castaneda's ideas, and it, as far as I could tell, it did not help them. So that's my own prejudice,
If you think about sort of the influence he had, I mean, the two that come to mind as being, to me, sort of the big ones would be John Lennon and George Lucas. If you think about that, the cultural impact that both Star Wars and the Beatles have had. And then you compare him to Crowley. Like, again, Crowley had like a huge influence, maybe not as visible, but like the more we learn about Crowley, I think you can see like his tendrils are everywhere. And it's like, it's pretty weird to think that these two kind of very unsavory, but also sort of almost kind of, I want to say kind of spiritually experimental people have had this like huge influence on, you know, things that relatively normal people know about, you know.
Do you have any advice to people who are pursuing their own self-directed practice to avoid that kind of situation?
Yeah.
I have an article on my blog post, which is my advice for sex magic with others. And it goes for any type of spiritual practice with others. And it basically it comes down to, you know, you want to develop your own practice, right? Whatever it is you're doing, and ground yourself in that. Even if it's just you know, you're doing 10 minutes of awareness or mindfulness meditation every morning. If you do yoga tape every day, you know, whatever it is you're doing, you go out and walk to a certain tree and kind of spend some quiet time with that tree. Whatever it is you're doing, know what you're doing and ground yourself in that and work on developing your own skills so you know your own worth. You always want to diversify, right? So you're going to want to develop your own friendships outside of spiritual practice. You're going to want to have hobbies. You're going to want to have a sensible day-to-day life. So you want to make sure that you're having a balanced diet and some exercise and getting, you know, outdoors, all that type of stuff. And when it comes to spiritual stuff, you know, you don't want to just like fall in with people right away. And you want to develop your own avenues of information and practice outside of that. And I would say a little bit over time is better than jumping right in. Now, there's always going to be people who want to jump right in because usually when you have a desire to know more about spirituality or spiritual desire, esoteric desire, it's usually very strong to get you over the hump. But, you know, you need to always maintain connections out of what, if you're pursuing like with a specific group, maintain your connections outside of that group. And sometimes you may need to get like really anal or kind of Cartesian about it. So just like look at your calendar for a week and for a month and see, you know, make sure that you're, calling your dad, right? That you're going out and getting coffee with your girlfriend, that you're going out there and doing your bike ride or whatever it is that you like to do as a hobby, that you have time for your crafts and stuff. So you're balancing that, and do your best to think critically about what you're being taught. Is there a way to disprove this? What are the skills that you're supposed to be developing or whatever? There's a lot of spiritual groups that have a more, like a lot of Wiccan groups and stuff that have a more structured, what do you call it? When you have a bunch of stuff you're going to study. Curriculum.
Like a curriculum, yeah.
Thank you, yeah. And I think that can be a good sign. But that is important. It's important to know your worth and to maintain your structured life outside of whatever your spiritual pursuits are. Another thing that I think is valuable, although I don't think it's very nice to think about, but as a safety measure, I bring it up. You need to think about any spiritual group that you are approaching. If you came walking in the door and they were going to exploit you, what are they going to see, right? So do you have money? Do you have professional or academic connections? Do you have like a strong back so you can provide labor? Are you sexy?
All of these things, all of the above.
Exactly, and more.
Your prime target, Buckley.
Yeah, well, yeah, as we've seen. Honestly, I've got all of these occult people are coming for me all the time.
Banging down your door.
Well, why wouldn't they?
Exactly.
They'd be lucky to get near it. And look at yourself from that angle so you can kind of, guard against that, hopefully. And the people that are that leave you alone and that seem boring are generally going to be people that are a little bit more on the level, as far as wanting a more straight across type of interaction. And I will say also that, obviously, if you're going to a group or a person, and they are, giving you meditation instruction or whatever it is, it's only reasonable to help them with expenses and give back to the group. But it's important to make sure that it seems like a reasonable and sensible interaction.
Steph, we usually ask our guests if they can recommend any books or podcasts or documentaries or films or TV shows or music or anything that they think that our listeners might be interested in or that you find important to yourself or anything like that.
See, this is one that always gets me put on the spot because especially the last few years, when I've been speaking out more, I have less time for intake. But I did want to recommend a book by Alex Matsuo, Matsuo, Women in the Paranormal. And it's just come out, and she is profiling, I think, about 25 different women who are prominent now or in the past in the paranormal field. And she had a couple of ladies in there that I had never heard of before, people that are involved in the SBR way back in the day, more modern women. And she's also working on a new volume. So I'm very excited about that. And she is a lot of fun on her TikTok and various presentations and stuff. She's very knowledgeable, but also very witty. And also people might want to check out Vanessa Wiliuko's Personal Pans. She has been putting on the Pan Paracon for a couple of years, which is an online conference. And she has a number of interviews with people that you can see on it's Personal Pans. It's a podcast feed and then also a YouTube channel. And she has a lot more diverse individuals as far as our let's say racial, gender, economic background, and a lot of artists too there. So if people are interested, she does chainmail, aluminum chainmail, jewelry and clothing. So yeah, so she's a very interesting person.
Excellent. That sounds fantastic. And where can people find you and your work?
Well, my blog is Ghost Dog is a Mystery Box. It's stephaniequick.home.blog. I am also on Facebook and on Twitter, and I think Blue Sky. I don't know, the whole Twitter thing is kind of, who knows where that's going.
You're a good follow on Twitter, though. I do enjoy your posts. Yeah,
that was where we first encountered your work, actually, was through Twitter. Because definitely recommend that, and we'll link to that in the show notes as well. And you've got YouTube videos as well, haven't you?
I have a YouTube. If you go to my blog, there's I think a contact or an about page, and it has like my YouTube channel and social media, and then also an email address if people want to email me weird experiences.
Fantastic. And if anyone out there wants to hear any more Vayse, you can find us on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Vayse, then Vayse spelled backwards. So that's at VAYSEESYAV. Our website is www.vayse.co.uk. You can find all our episodes there. You can find all our episodes on all of the usual podcast platforms. But if you go to our website, the full show notes are there. The show notes are expansive, and you'll find loads of interesting things in there. And I'm sure that the show notes for this episode are going to be incredible as well. And you can email us with your weird experiences too at vayse.info@gmail.com. You can get the soundtrack on Bandcamp, and Buckley's done the soundtrack there under his name Polypores, and it's excellent, and any money that he makes from that soundtrack goes back into the podcast, so that's fantastic. And if you maybe already got the soundtrack but you want to throw some cash our way, if you can afford to, we have a Ko-Fi, and if you make a regular subscription on there, you can become a member of our Discord server, which is a lot of fun at the moment. Actually, I'm really enjoying hosting on
the
there.
Discord is great.
And if you enjoy the podcast, then like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, share, because that is how people find out about this stuff, particularly with Twitter going the way it's going and social media becoming fractured in the way that it is. Word of mouth is so important. And I think that goes for everyone's work in this field as well. So tell a friend, tell everyone. It doesn't matter if you're friends or not. In fact, you might make friends telling people about this. So
it's highly unlikely, but you might.
Yeah. If you do, they will be a great friend. Yeah. Friend for life. And thanks everyone for listening, and thanks so much, Steph, for being so generous with your time. It's been so interesting. Really
we could have gone on for another 2 hours.
We've barely touched any of the questions that we messaged you about earlier. That it's been so interesting, so fascinating.
Yeah. So Steph, before you go, one more question. So regular listeners will know that as the guy who plays the clown role on this particular podcast, I usually ask a bit of a silly question at the end. But I'm actually going to ask one that isn't that silly, because I think that it's maybe important. I think as we're both men, as you've probably gathered, and there's a lot of men in this area, isn't there? In the occult, ufology, whatever you want to call it, all these areas, it's a very much a man thing a lot of the time, which I don't think it was always the case, but I definitely don't think it should be the case, but it does seem very male dominated. What advice would you give to men like us to make it a better space for women in terms of, a better experience or whatever?
Not just women. I mean, maybe people who are just non-male as well.
Yeah. How can we be better allies, I suppose, is the phrase.
I focus on a couple of things. One is just give women more space, right? I was just talking recently with the guy, I forgot his name, the guy who hosts the Necronomicast podcast. And he, along with people like Rick Palmer of Some Other Sphere, Jeffrey Pritchett, Church of Mabus, they just make it a project to have more of a gender balance on their shows. And that, just makes it amazing. And it really helps women, because it just changes the space, because it's not so male. And you have to make an effort to do that. And a lot of times women will be covering things that you're interested in, but maybe from a different angle or perspective. And so this is good too, because, it helps to, instead of just having people just kind of follow down a rabbit hole, or you're just following what you're just attracted to anyway, it helps you to diversify, right, your theory and your social connections and whatnot. So I think that it helps make a stronger community. It helps make each of us individually stronger to have more diverse connections out there. And the other thing is, like you're saying with social media, it's possible to boost women's reply. One person I like is John Tenney, because he speaks, he always is replying and boosting and liking a lot of non-men on his social media feed. And of course, he has a huge number of followers. So just that type of thing can make a difference. Engaging with people's ideas, irrespective if they're male, female, decline. My dad would always say decline to state or non-binary.
Yeah.
This was back when I was a little girl. My dad would tease me about that. And so, that's another way, just, engaging with people and engaging in the level of ideas. I was talking with someone else today about when you're taking issue with the way someone is practicing esoterically or some theory that they have or something, don't automatically call them a soccer mom or gender people that way. I heard someone today was saying, then they're just going to squawk that it's patriarchal, these witches. And it's like, witches is tended female, patriarchal. Well, that would be kind of usually someone who's not a man would complain about. And what he was complaining about was people being more culturally appropriative, which is not a gendered thing, right? So you didn't have to go there, but it just becomes so. I was listening to a podcast, and there's 3 guys that I have had very well respected in the parapolitical or para-weird sphere. And they were putting down people who are dilettantes in the UFO field. And this one guy's like, well, I think of them as like the bored housewife contingent. And it's like, you didn't have to gender that female.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm sure we can all think of individual people at the top of our heads who are men who are UFO dilettantes, right?
Yeah.
But just looking at your language, I like Eric Wargo is great on his blogs. If he has like a what do you see? A person who's imaginary, who's standing in for a person, he'll always gender them as female. And then he chooses a lot of his subjects of people to write about as women artists and stuff. And he, there's incredible subjects out there. Lots of times if you take if you just have that impetus to look into something and say, well, I'll look at it through, someone who's not white or who's not rich, or I'll try and find someone who's not a man. And then this can, you can find really interesting stuff because these are people whose experiences are usually less addressed. So, those are some suggestions.
Yeah, I mean,
thanks for asking that.
It's stepping outside of your own reality tunnel, essentially, isn't it? And sort of
perfect, exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Steph.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely loved talking to you. It's been fantastic. It's been a real privilege.
No, thank you. I really appreciated it, and it was so funny. I loved your questions because there was like a lot. It was like over 14, 15 of them, and they were all really good, meaty, very important questions. And it delighted me especially because a few months ago, I've had questions about Jacques Vallée. I guess a number of years ago, in the 70s, he did a CE5 experiment here in Northern California. So I've only heard a few bits and pieces about it over the years, and I've just been dying of curiosity because I'm very interested in people who try and gin up flying saucers and aliens and stuff. But I was like, I'm just like, he's Jacques Vallée, I'm just a worm, he won't pay attention to me. Anyway, so a few months ago, I had come up with a list of like my documents. Like I have questions for Jacques Vallée all about this. And it was very much, like 3 pages of just like crammed full of this, that, and the other thing. What's the environment? What were you thinking? Who your influence is, blah, blah, blah. And I talked to some different people and they're like, oh, he's actually very approachable. You can just send him an email and, he got back to this person. He's, takes him a couple of weeks, but blah, blah, blah. So finally, I don't know, back probably about 4 months ago, I was like, okay. So I wrote an email and I sent this document to him and just like, I want to talk to you about this thing. And I haven't heard squat. So, fair play, because if I was Jacques Vallée at this point in time, everything going on in the UFO field, the last thing I want to talk about is me in the woods, in the redwoods in Northern California, making an altar to try and attract a bunch of flying saucers. But it cracked me up when I got your email because I thought, this is like what I sent to Vayse. And I'm just
Jacques, if you're listening, get back to Steph, for God's sake. Yeah. Come on, time's ticking.
And it tickled me too because, right, you guys start with the VA as well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
So I thought, this, because I thought, well, you know what? This is... My email had the perfect intention because I got to talk to you guys, and I don't know if you were particularly on my radar at that point. So it was a really fun talking with you, and I thought that was really kind of a fun, synchronicity or energy coming back.
That's
somehow.
A good one. Yeah. And obviously Vayse does listen to our show, so he'll now hear it, and I'm sure
Finally.
It's the highlight of his.
Right.
It's the highlight of his week. He's like,
we love you, Jacques. Get back to me. Don't leave me hanging.
Sorry, Tom DeLong, I can't do dinner tonight.